So my name is Stefanie Kethers. I'm a Senior Business Analyst with the Australian National Data Service. And I'll just talk a little bit about what ANS actually is. So the Australian National Data Service is an initiative of the Australian Government, federally funded, and part of the National Collaborative Research Infrastructure Strategy and the Super Science Initiative. We have about 50 staff, probably around 40 FT or something like that, and are currently funded until mid-2013. So we're in a similar situation to Oren, we just finished it earlier. The main mission that ANS has is that more researchers can use more data more often. So we would like to make data available to more researchers so that they can use data that other people have produced. And other people doesn't necessarily mean other researchers. That could also be data coming from the public sector. And the other thing we would like to achieve is that data is seen as a first-class output of research and not a secondary sort of byproduct. At the moment, as you probably all know, the main output from research is publications. And we think that data sets or data can often be or should be considered a first-class object as well, which is why we contribute to international initiatives such as DataCite, which looks at making DOIs available for data sets. Okay, so we often talk about what we're trying to do as we're enabling transformations of data that are currently unmanaged to structured collections that are managed, so that are managed and curated. From data that are disconnected, that are sitting on someone's hard drive or thumb drive or on a DVD, to data that is actually connected to the wider world so that people can find it. From data that is invisible because it is sitting on someone's private hard drive, to data that is findable, and from data that is single use, you know, you create it, you publish about it, then you put it away and no one ever sees it again, to data that is reusable. So that Australian researchers can more easily publish, discover, access, and use research data. Now, a caveat there, of course, that wouldn't work with all data. There's data that is under ethics, there's data that a PhD student needs for their PhD thesis. That's not the sort of thing. We don't want to encourage everyone to put all of their data available to everyone. There's a whole range, there's a whole continuum between having data completely private and having data completely public. So we do understand that. Our approach to research data is we're trying to provide a coherent institutional approach because we think that leads to greater research efficiency. So we interact with institutions and set up projects and programs and help institutions to have something that is hopefully institution-wide. We have a national approach to data publication and discovery services. We are helping to build the Australian Research Data Commons, which is a means of sharing research data, and I'll talk a little bit about one of the services that ANS provides in that context. And we're building capability to exploit data. And by capability, we mean things like tools, we help with policy, and we would like to encourage institutions and people to develop the skills to actually make these things happen. Okay, just a couple of core ANS services that we provide. One of those is Research Data Australia, which is our like to the Australian Research Data Commons. That's the discovery service, and I'll show you a screenshot of that in a minute. It's a portal where you can look for data, you can also look for people, you can look for projects, you can look for services, but it's mainly predominantly a data discovery service. And the idea is that you can look for things, and if you find a record in there, you will find a metadata record in there that shows you who created the data, who owns the data, who manages the data, so it shows you how to get to the data, who to contact if it's mediated access. It talks a little bit about where the data comes from in terms of is it associated with a research project, is it associated with an international project, an ARC-funded project, an NHMRC-funded project, something like that, and who the institution is that the data comes from. We also have a couple of other services. I've already briefly mentioned DataCite, which ANS is the DOI registration authority for Australia, so we can actually mint DOIs or help you mint DOIs for your own data sets. We also have a handle service which provides a persistent handle that you can use to identify your data sets if you don't want to use a DOI for it. And we also have a service called Register My Data, which is fairly complex, and I think Sarah knows all about it. This is one way of providing metadata about data sets to us. It's only one way though. Okay, this is a screenshot of Research Data Australia that I took yesterday. So as of yesterday, there were about 43,000 data collections in Research Data Australia. So it's not enormous, but there's certainly quite a bit in there. A lot of these actually are biological data collections, so quite a bit. I think we're getting another feed in from the Atlas of Living Australia, but we also have quite a bit from, I think, QFAB in there. So there's a lot of stuff in that respect, but we have quite good coverage. I think by now we have pretty much most ANZFOR codes represented in there, I was told. I didn't check, but I think by now we do. We also have quite a bit of information on researchers and research organisations and some research groups. We also have much less information, because that is something that's only now been ramped up a little bit, on tools that operate on those data sets that you can actually have a look at. And we also have a list of projects and grants that are associated with those data collections. Okay, this is a more or less random record that I just wanted to show because there are quite a few things that are interesting. So first of all, we have a title. This is about juvenile cassowaries, in case anyone's interested in cassowaries. It has a brief description. It has some spatial coverage. So it shows you the area that the data covers. It has temporal coverage as well. So it tells you that this was done in 2011, between April and September. It has some keywords. It has some identifiers down here. It also has information on access, which is unfortunately cut off, but if you click on that, you will get to either a landing page or the data directly, depending on how this is set up. It talks about access rights. So this, for example, says, the data in this project is only available to specific users, that you can contact the researcher or the owner to see if you can get access to it. There's a rights statement. And there are connections down here, so there's the researcher that you can contact. And if you click on that, you'll get to a page about that particular researcher. So I just wanted to show that Research Data Australia doesn't only contain collections where you can click on a link and go straight to the data. It can also be data that is restricted. I think that's quite important, because when we talk to people about making their data available, quite a few say, but I want to know who has access to my data. And yes, we understand that. We know that that's something we want to. We're happier with data that is made available through mediated access than data that is just sitting somewhere and no one knows about it. Okay, now why do we do those things? This is just one brief example. This has not come out of our work, but this is one of the examples that we give people when they say, but who would ever want to look at my data, and why would they want to use my data? So this is just an example where the data comes not from a research project, but from whaling boats that were capturing the data, the latitude, longitude, day and time of when they caught a whale. And a later analysis of that data that was collected in the 30s and 40s, actually since the 30s and 40s, discovered that because the whales were caught in different places, the ice must have changed. So the ice around the Arctic summer sea ice must have changed, because in the areas that people caught whales in the 30s, they were far more north, whereas now you can actually find them more south, where there would have been ice in the 30s, so you wouldn't have been able to find whales there. So this is just an example of why sometimes it's actually quite useful to look at data that may not even be related to what you think you're looking for, but may actually give you quite good indication of what has actually happened, and give you quite good indications of how to address your problem that you're trying to solve. Okay, now just because I've talked so much about research and researchers and the fact that we engage with research institutions, we also have an area in ANZ that is called public sector data, and we also engage with government agencies and public sector organisations like state archives, the ABS, Bureau of Meteorology, places like that. So what we actually ideally like government agencies to do, if they want to, is of course make data available for use and tell us about it. So give us descriptions of those data sets so that we can publish them in Research Data Australia. And if you ever want to do that sort of thing, please feel free to talk to us and we'll be happy to help. Of course, you can also reuse the data sets that are made available through Research Data Australia. So if you're looking for data sets, by all means, have a look at Research Data Australia, search around, see if it's something you're interested in that you could use. We're also happy to provide expertise and talk about things like DRIs or licensing or all kinds of things that we have some expertise in, and about skills that you might need to be managing data in a certain way. We're happy to talk about that. And of course, we're always happy to hear other people's experiences and learn from them. So in any case, if you want, please feel free to talk to us, contact me, or you can have a chat to me or my colleague Ning Fan Wu, who's sitting at the back while we're here. Or just contact us through the usual means such as email. Okay, thank you very much.
Is there any questions for Stefanie on hands? Just got time for one quick one. Yes?
What's going to happen to your website with assets, etc., when you're running like that?
As far as we know, the website and the services will be maintained, probably by one of our partners. But the exact detail we don't know yet, but we know that they will be maintained.
Okay, thank you.